Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today, our guest originally hails from Australia, where he was known as Wesley. With a platinum single, a gold album under his belt, he's made his way to the United States under the name Wesley Dean. He's already opened for Travis Tritt and supported Jimmy Messina's tour. I would describe his sound as Chris Isaak meets Tom Petty meets Leon Russell. It's a really cool, hip sound. Welcome, Wesley, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Very honored to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what it was like.
I was born in a very small town called Elizabeth. It's getting bigger now. In Adelaide, South Australia. Elizabeth has this kind of crazy legacy of Aussie rock, Australian rock and roll, from bands like Cold Chisel, like Jimmy Barnes, Little River Band, some lineage to AC/DC, Australian iconic bands. And they all kind of originated out of these really small towns like Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth being one of the main places. So I was born there in 82 after those rock and rollers had left, made their way and made their millions. I was the sort of the next batch to come in and was born in such an isolated kind of town. And you had to be good at something to sort of survive it. Most people played football and cricket, Australian sport, Aussie rules football. And I played all of those things, got good at that. But mainly I was more interested in music. I was the weird kid on the block that was dancing in the front living room to Motown records and pretending that I was on stage in front of millions of people sort of thing. And my idol at the time was Michael Jackson. Entertainers, I really loved the vaudeville kind of music. My mum and dad had these really eclectic records. I was just the music person in the family. No one else would really listen to music or even, it was just something that you hear on the radio on a Saturday afternoon more so than anything. For me, music was everything. It was an escape. I just thought there was a promise of something new, something better, I guess. I taught myself how to play guitar when I was 12 and then ended up moving to Sydney when I was really young. My mum and dad split when I was 12. I started playing guitar and started getting into Nirvana and that kind of 90s music, Smashing Pumpkins, and I was in bands and then I started playing in little bars and clubs when I was 14 years old. My dad would drive me around in the middle of the night and I'd play all these King's Cross venues, Oxford Street venues, places in Sydney, acoustic venues. And that's how I learned how to be a musician, playing late night bars. 14, it might have been a little bit strange to the audience. So what's this kid doing up at this time of day? But that's how I learned. There wasn't any TikTok, iPhones, anything like that back in 97, 98. It was me just with a guitar on a bar stool playing barefoot to 50, 60 people in a bar. And
that's cool.
That's how I learned how to write music.
While you were touring, playing out in Australia, you moved to America in 2021?
I did. I moved to Nashville February 21 with my two boys and my wife at the height of the pandemic. It was nuts. It was so crazy. We sold our house. We gave away everything we really had. I mean, we had 22 suitcases on the way over or something like that. It's ridiculous, but it was nothing compared to a household of memories. Borders were closed in Australia because of the pandemic. Had to have special permission to leave.
Wow.
A year later, after planning on moving in March 2020, obviously we couldn't do it then. The world shut down. Around about a year later, February 21, we got the opportunity to move. Got the permission granted from the Aussie government and was just like, okay, we got to go. And we got on a plane with a handful of other people and that was it. We left into the unknown and it was something that I guess on paper you sort of go, oh yeah, this is doable, but actually doing it with a 2-year-old at the time and a 7-year-old and my wife, leaving her folks and everything. I mean, she's the real hero in this whole expedition, our adventures, because I was leaving for music and she was leaving for me. And it was a whole other psychology there for her, saying goodbye to her parents and her very close family. And I mean, I was excited by the fact that we were going to relocate into this incredible country like America, that the ceiling is off here, especially in music. In Australia, it can be limited down there. There's a plethora of amazing musicians and talent down there that are world class. And I feel like some of those people don't even know how good they are,
Yeah.
It can be so small and isolating. But when you come to America, it's like, oh man, I've got to deliver here because there's just so much opportunity and you can be anything you kind of want. My 2-year-old is now, he's 6.5. He's more American than he is Australian. It's crazy. Australia, we just took a trip back and we were reintroducing him to his homeland of Australia and he's being a magpie for the first time. The bird life down there is crazy, and he's just like crazy to see Australia through his eyes. Amazing, because we'd been gone for 3.5 years.
He wouldn't have remembered anything.
No, that's That's right. And just looking back on like relocating at that time, just crazy. We were lucky, but it was also very challenging in a lot of ways too.
I imagine a lot of moving parts there.
Yes.
Also, getting used to a whole other culture, I imagine, too.
Yeah, mainly when you got kids, Sarah, everything becomes much more heightened of what you do, and years go past and they're growing up really quickly. And then you look around and you're like, oh man, I had all these to-dos and all these, things that I was gonna do, when they were 2. And now my eldest is pushing 12 and you're like, wow. And then you start thinking me and my music and all of that stuff, it starts to reshape everything, it starts to reshape your whole mindset. And then, your creative mind is different. Everything looks different. I know that's a real blessing. We've been able to travel the world with our family, especially America. We've traveled we looked at the map the other day and we've done like nearly 40 states.
Wow.
Yeah, since being here. Last summer, we took an RV trip across America in the hottest summer ever recorded.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
we're putting together a documentary, and we shot 10 music videos on that trip for this record for Music from Crazy Hearts. So big rolling out on YouTube and all the platforms. And I'm also putting together an art house cinema experience with all the 10 music videos.
Cool.
It's endless. Pretty amazing.
Talk a little bit about that new album, Crazy Hearts.
Music from Crazy Hearts. A lot of people just call it Crazy Hearts. It came to us because of the pending documentary and then the music will kind of a soundtrack for that documentary. But we're independent, and we pivot at any moment. Things change creatively, and as this evolves, it's like, is it the right time for a doco yet? Or I'm starting to get all these amazing opportunities, like working with the Nashville Ballet. We're premiering
cool.
the video, yeah. So the video for Crazy Hearts, the song on the record, has a music video featuring the Nashville Ballet. They're premiering it this Thursday night at TPAC.
Are you serious? That is
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, before the Dracula Ballet. All these amazing opportunities have written themselves ever since I decided that I was going to write this record by myself. You come to Nashville and your head starts to spin because there's so many amazing people here, creative people here, writers. You've got pretty much anyone who's anyone living around the corner. Every writer under the sun now feels like they're in Nashville, or do time in Nashville. They come from LA or New York, they come to Nashville to write. I have quite a lot of opportunity. I met a lot of people, it's a very friendly, incredible town. They embrace you as one of their own as when you move in, it's like,
yeah,
people just want to help you. And it's such a generous town, but you kind of have to navigate where you fit in it all as an artist. And so when I moved, it was like, I want to do everything. And then I did a whole bunch of stuff. And then I realized that all I was doing was burning myself out and almost confusing my own intention, confusing where I was coming from as an artist. I was sort of like the chameleon, and I enjoy being the chameleon. But with Music from Crazy Hearts, it was kind of me putting my flag in the ground and saying, well, this is who I am right now in this moment. And so I decided that I was going to write the record myself, and I was just going to sort of take control of the direction and the intention of this album as sort of a flagship for me and my music to then build from the foundation that Crazy Hearts has really become. It's become sort of this ethos of life, of like, somebody like me. Crazy person who decides to move in a pandemic across the world, or or playing music since 8 years old, that kind of thing.
So this album, was it written on the road during this trip across the United States?
I'd written some of the music I was getting up at 3 a.m. and I was writing some of the music in the middle of the night. Then this road trip came about, and I was putting the finishing touches on the album as we were driving through America. It was crazy how much the landscape of America married up to the music.
Yeah.
It all just kind of felt like it wrote itself. As soon as I decided on what I was going to do, like the road opened up, everything kind of opened up, and there was this like amazing flow about it. It's great because people are just starting to discover who I am, what I'm doing, through Crazy Hearts. It feels like, although I've been doing this for a long time in Australia, but moving to America kind of made me realize who I was in a way. It's just kind of funny to say that, but I feel like I've kind of grown into myself through the process of being in America and being in Nashville and being around, this intensely creative city, which is Nashville. It's quite amazing, actually. It's not just the country music capital, it's the music capital of the world, I think,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's just a buzz and an energy, I feel like, to that city.
Yeah, it really is. You're right, yeah.
I lived there for about 10 years. I just remember, going into cafes to write and stuff, and, coffee shops, and you could just feel the energy. And it was great.
Yeah, it is great.
The documentary, is it the series of songs, or or is it documentary on its own, like with the story involved? And
It keeps shape shifting a little, it's becoming much more of a story about where I come from and, I guess the music journey that I've been on since I was very, very young. But also I think the focus point is our move across the ocean in 21 and getting to Nashville and realizing that you can't depend on anyone but yourself if you're going to make something of yourself, in the dream is never over. It never dies. It only dies if you say it's going to die.
Oh, I love that. The dream never dies.
Yeah, that's the Crazy Hearts ethos of when you see the video, it's released this Friday. I'll send it to you if you've got an email or something. I'll get Bobby or
Yeah, that'd be great.
the video really paints this picture of me as the chameleon as a kid, always having to trying to fit themselves into the square peg in the round hole, feeling a little bit like an outsider, always sort of looking in, trying to understand the world and reflecting it through music. And Nick at Nashville Ballet, who's become a good friend of mine, they choreographed this incredible dance that's in the video.
Wow.
Getting back to your question, I think the documentary is that crazy heart spirit of an artist, not just me, but kind of anyone in the world, no matter who they are, might be working this dead end job somewhere, but underneath they're an artist that just needs that break. And maybe the traditional ways isn't the right thing for them, and then them trying to shape shift in order to fit themselves into a certain mold that's not right for them. There's so many people out there that I know that even at my shows come up to me and say, that they're doing their thing and they haven't found their road yet, but they're still doing it. It's kind of like don't give up, don't look back, don't give up, just keep rolling, and it will happen in some way that possibly will surprise you the most. There's so much to it, I guess. I'm just riffing now, but I think there's a lot of story there that we're yet to flush out. At the moment, we've got this 10 music videos that's going to become the album visualizer with a story that links all the songs as one thing. So at the moment, we're focusing on that, and then the documentary is sort of again going to possibly just write itself one day in the next in the next month or so.
Right. Yeah. So that's a lot of work. That's pretty impressive. How was recording at RCA Studios?
Oh, it was fantastic. Such an honor to be in that room. I mean, that was where Dolly Parton recorded Jolene and I Will Always Love You in one day. Anywhere between Stapleton to Isbell to Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, I think Elvis did a stint there. That room has just got so much history. And so when you walk in, you're sort of you're blown away by you can feel it, in the wall, feel the energy. And so we recorded the record in 5 days, the 10 songs on the album. And it was we took our time with it, but I wanted everything to be live. I didn't want it to be tracked you go in and you play the guitar and then you go in and you do the piano and you track it up and layer it. It was more no, everybody has to be in one room and we're all just playing this live like we're playing, a show. That's how we did it. I think you can feel it on the album that there's no click track, no digital type manipulation going on with timing and all that. It's just pure from the heart, and I don't know. I just enjoy listening to music with that intention. Not always, by the way. I'm a massive pop fan as well. And I love today's pop music, but there's just something to be said. 5 people in a room playing music like we were, never going to play a song again kind of thing, just raw and honest, I guess,
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, there's definitely a different vibe between live playing and then layering the track. So I can see.
In Australia, I was a pop star there for a while and I went through and had a number one and, that kind of thing. It was really fun. But I really enjoy as an artist to, first of all, write the song, but then getting into the studio and just being creative and just trying out new things and trying to serve the actual song itself and not having to think about, is this going to be to the top of the charts and that kind of thing, because that's a whole other intention. I feel like that's a whole other art form, which is also a great art form and really interesting. And I love part of the world too. But this album was more about making something that sounds like my soul. And then if I was to like it, then maybe someone else out there is going to like it kind of thing,
Yeah, definitely. So you wrote all the songs on the album.
Yep.
Who else played on the album?
Brian Killian on drums. I've got Adam Beard on bass, Charlie Lowell on keyboards, and Chris Harar on guitar. And they've all become my very dear friends, but they're also incredible musicians in their own right. They do sessions and they're in different bands as well. Charlie Lowell is from a Christian band called Jars of Clay.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
I know that the other four have been in bands that you would know, like they've all been around the block and they're incredible musicians. And the best part about it is they're great people, And Justin Cortelyou, who produced the record, I've known Justin since 2010, since I first started coming to Nashville when I was like 25 or something, 26. And when I moved to Nashville, there'd been 12 years since we'd seen each other or whatever. So kind of cool to sort of reconnect and make something like what we made. It was like kind of written in the stars almost, just something that I never would have anticipated over those 12 years, because a lot of life happened. We both got married, had kids and whatever. And then by the time 12 years, time kind of bouldered a bit and it was back to kind of like, hey man, yeah, remember me? So yeah, it was really cool to be able to sort of work with Justin on that level. But also there was something to be said about just going into the studio and recording my own music in a place like that. It felt everything that I had ever done in my life kind of accumulated in that one moment, in those 5 days in RCAs. When I listened to the album, it feels like, oh yeah, cool. I'm proud of it. And I think it's for the first time I can say I'm proud of something, because I'm always pretty hard on myself,
That's always a good feeling, isn't it? When
Yeah.
you feel like you put out your best.
Also, when when you're an artist, I mean, there's one thing about talking about it. The other thing is like actually delivering something that you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. And I'm happy with it.
Yeah. It's easy to talk a big game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You've talked about some of your early influences. Who are some of your, when I say most recent, like maybe in the last 10 years, people you've looked up to since you've made the transition to the United States? Are there any artists who've really influenced your work or you feel you kind of look up to?
To be honest, I don't look to people for like influence for some reason. When I'm writing my music, it's always very introverted and very insular. It's 3 a.m. in the morning and it's like, how can I say this differently? Or, I'm always challenging myself with words and playing, and it's kind of a bit of a spiral. It's like a madman. How can I kind of challenge myself? And it's a very individual situation. But I admire anyone who's made any kind of sort of ripple in the music industry, because it's such a hard industry to kind of make a name for yourself, or, some people treat it like a sport, I just admire everybody who's ever done anything, from the big artists like Post Malone and those kind of guys to Stephen Wilson Jr., who I really think he's a great songwriter and great energy. I played in Beaver Creek where he was on the bill this past week, and my wife actually met him, tracked him down in a dive bar at 2 a.m. and gave him my vinyl, which is hilarious, which is very much my wife. She's the real rock star. To be honest, I always look to the people that I've been listening to since I was really young, since I started writing music. I'm a big Hendrix fan. Most of my idols are past. John Lennon and people that really stood for something. I really admire those people. They stand for something in the midst of whatever's going, or whatever adverse things going on at the time. Like I admire John Lennon's kind of outspoken cynicism thing that he had that was like a beacon of light almost. It was sort of like his kind of, I don't know, there's something about it that shone true. And maybe even if you disagree with somebody like that, you still admire the strength of being true. I admire anyone who sticks their head out and kind of says, hey, this is me. I'm unashamedly myself. I feel like those people have the power to unite. Even if you disagree with something, it's like, oh, wow, So I just love music because it's the universal language. Everybody, no matter what side you're on, can be standing in the same stadium singing Hey Jude.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the best part about music is the unity that it brings. And so classical music, I went through a Debussy stage. Beethoven. When I was younger, I was always listening to Beethoven. And I had all these CDs of classical music. I'd go to the library and hire all these obscure classical music CDs.
That's cool.
Just Nick Drake, wow, like what an artist he was. The more obscure, to be honest, I get into it a lot more because I'm like, I'd go down the rabbit hole and I want to know how they came to being that. What made them tick? And I think it was like Michael Jackson who said, study the greats and be greater. That's a kind of a cool thing to have in the back of your mind, is that, like, I guess as a young musician, I think a lot of cats these days are on a loop. They're sitting on TikTok or wherever and they're trying to get somewhere quick, trying to get the next trend, the next hashtag. And it's a scramble, and the creative spirit is not actually there's no connection there. It's actually, ironically, it's a bit disconnected. And being truthful, you got to kind of really understand yourself in order to create what you really want to say. And that's sitting somewhere quietly and having some self-awareness around it. It's taken me a long time to to work out what I wanted to say and who I was, because I started really young too. So it can be confusing. And I get why people sit on TikTok, by the way. I understand it. There's no right or wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it's like, I think to be able to be truly creative, you've got to really, truly know yourself. And that's a hard thing to do in such a noisy world.
Yeah, so many distractions.
Yeah.
It's not helpful in the creative world so much because it's the exact opposite of stopping, listening, and taking it all in.
You know what? I think it's just like a different art form. I feel like there's so many tree branches to art these days, no matter where you are. If you're an acrylic painter or you're a digital artist or there's no right or wrong. Art is like, it's always going to grow and expand, and with technology and everything's it's going to get better, and that's great too. And there's a use for it all. It's just, I think the psychology of creating and how you arrive at it can be challenging at times, when as a dad, some of the technology and things can be addictive more so than it being actually helping you with a craft. I'm glad that I didn't have any of that around when I was 12 and I just picked up my mum's old nylon string guitar and started writing songs. And I don't want to be on my high horse too much about this, by the way, because it's not. There's always, someone that's going to have the antithesis of that as well. So there's no right or wrong, like I said. But creating is a very different. You approach it differently with different intentions.
I think it's just different animals.
Yeah, for sure.
Wesley, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries, Sarah. Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah.
I've really enjoyed hearing your story, and I know our listeners will too. And the new album, completely out. I saw 3 songs.
Yeah, no, completely out. And the videos are coming out every sort of 6 weeks or so. We've got, so on YouTube, I think about 5 or 6 videos have been released so far. And so, so there's a visual for every song, which I'm really blessed to be able to say that, because not a lot of people are doing, I don't think anyone's doing 10 music videos for 10 songs on their record these days. It's something that's quite unique, I think. It's the Crazy Heart way.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Wesley.
Thanks, Sarah.
Here's a short clip to next week's interview with McKinley James. You talk a little bit about how your dad pushed you to sing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. When I was first starting to learn guitar, I didn't even think about it. Like, it wasn't even like, I never had the thought of, I want to sing songs and stuff. I never thought about it. Like, I'm going to, want to learn how to play guitar. It's like, okay, well then you got to learn how to sing. And at first I was like, why? He kind of didn't, it's just like, I just want to play guitar. But he was like, well, you'll always get, a lot more opportunity if you learn how to sing. Even if you, sing a little bit, you can at least be a guitar player that knows how to do harmonies. So, you'll always have kind of like that, a little leg up of opportunity, because especially if you move to a town of guitar players like Nashville, there's so many killer guitar players that are better than you everywhere you look. So it's like, well, if you can sing, it's like, oh, well, I can do a gig with you because you may not sing, but you are a killer guitar player and I can play guitar and I can sing, so we can do gigs. It's just, you kind of tree branches from there, and then you learn on songwriting and stuff. So I slowly was like, okay, I'll learn how to do it. Once I kind of got over that hump of like, oh, okay, I can do it. I can see some results. This is fun. I fell in love with it because it was like, okay, I can do this. This is fun. And it's another way of expressing yourself that I never would have thought to do. It's just like, I just want to play guitar. But now, like, songwriting and stuff like that, it's just like, whoa, it's opened up a bunch of opportunities. And if he'd never, encouraged me and pushed me to do it, I wouldn't be here today. That's for sure.